under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. This meeting will be broadcast in accordance to fulfill our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this remote meeting will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council website. Members of the Integration Joint Board are reminded that they should follow the IGP's established meeting protocol, including the use of chat facility, and comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in this meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received an invite to this meeting. Thank you. And you want to start a roll call, please?
We have the following apology for absence. We have an apology from Dr. MacDonald. Chair will now move to a roll call for asking for the declarations of interest. And the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely. Councillor Moran.
Present in the chamber.
Alan Cowan.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Anne Cameron Burns. David Gould. Dr. Becca Metcalf.
Present in the chamber.
Kate Rocks.
Present in the chamber.
Jonathan Hines.
Present in the chamber.
Craig Gibbon.
Present in the chamber.
Laura Moore.
Present on screen, thanks.
Dr. Chris Jones. Gemma Eardley.
Present online.
Diane Cohen.
Present in the chamber.
Charlene Elliott. Margaret Tate.
Present in the chamber.
Christina Boyd.
Present in the chamber.
Stephen McLaughlin.
I am present online.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Can I just make my usual one that I'm the Secretary of the Board of the Carer Centre?
Margaret Tate, Chair of Your Voice.
Right. Thank you, Diane. We move on to the business, and item number 2 is a minute of Inverclyde Integration Joint Board on the 25th of September 2023. Has everyone had a look at the minute?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah. Can everybody online hear?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm present online, and Cameron Burns. There's some technical trouble here, thanks.
That's okay, I can see you now, you're fine. Is everybody else okay online? Taking that. Okay, is anybody able to bring up the minute for the meeting of September? I don't see any indication, so we're happy with that minute. Right on to item 3 is Project Best Value Labour Quote and Craig.
Thank you very much. This is our best value of the scope paper. At September IJB, a final accounts were presented and signed off. As part of that report, we highlighted that our annual report from external audit was still outstanding, and the best value and wider scope work was still to be completed. This has now been completed, and the various recommendations are now included in Appendix 5. As you will see, we have one outstanding item from the previous year in the integration schemes. This is currently underway, and the report's coming later this morning to show that we're about to go out to consultation on this item. The report highlights 4 new actions. These are regular updates to our financial regulations, work around the risk management, a longer-term financial strategy, and work around our national performance indicators. I'm pleased to say that these items are currently being worked on, and we don't have any significant issues around the order for recommendations here. As we will see, Chris Paisley from KPMG has also been online this morning, so I'm happy to pass over to Chris to see if he has anything further he'd like to say on the matter.
Thank you, Craig. Before we carry on, if anybody wants to raise a question, you can use the chat facility or raise your hand, how it suits. Anybody got any question for Craig on the report? Christina Boyd.
There was just something on page 14 where it says specifically there will be no ongoing COVID-related costs on the basis that the Scottish Government has now removed any funding for this area. Now, clearly there are still people in Inverclyde who are suffering from long COVID, we know that. So where is the funding for any treatment or clinics for people who are suffering from long COVID coming from, now that this particular money has been removed?
We haven't been given any additional monies for long COVID, so unfortunately we're having to absorb it within existing budgets.
Chris, sorry, I forgot. Would you like to comment on the report, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I mean, Craig has somewhat stolen my thunder, or in another way of saying, has done a really good job of summarising what I was going to say. But in terms of, you'll have seen a form of this report back in September, which dealt with the financial statement side of the audit. And what we said then was that at this meeting we'd bring back the commentary on the wider scope and best value work. I think, well, I hope that. That section begins, on page 11 of the report through to 18, and hopefully you've had time to digest that. Hopefully you recognise the IJB in the commentary, and you think it's a balanced reflection of arrangements and achievements during the year. I think my overall reflection is that arrangements are reasonable and appropriate, and it's for that reason we've not raised any high risk recommendations. Progress against prior recommendations has been positive, and as Craig pointed out, there's just the one around the sorry, 1 second. There's just one around the integration scheme that is still kind of needs a bit of more work on. So yeah, we I think hopefully you'll see that this is a positive reflection on the IJB. Naturally, there are things to look at and address, which is what we've made 4 recommendations pertaining to, which are set out on pages 26 and 27 of the report. None of them I would regard as a showstopper, but ones that we feel would be remiss not to address in our report. And I'm happy with the responses from management that would effectively address or deal with those recommendations. I'm happy to take any questions. I wasn't going to walk through page by page because I know you've got a busy agenda, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Chris, and your report. Is anybody any other questions on the report? I'll go.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Maybe just 3 quick opening Chris's comments. The first one is, I know we had to do this in 2 parts this year, Chris and Craig, and so I think from the board's perspective, if we can get back to the situation where we take the best value work and the wider audit work at the same time, and then when we're approving our governance approach for the year, we've actually got the collective whole picture. I accept that this is a particularly good report, so it doesn't really matter So it's just a general point of trying to bring both of those back together. It's historically what we've done in the past, so it's just a comment for the officers and the auditors to digest. I think the sense I got previously was that was going to be the case. Bringing them back together at the same time would be good. The point about the risk management work, a minor point, but I think and I can see there's a timeline to get that done, really helpful for, and I accept that this is probably no, we just didn't say it, but it's really helpful for the audit committee to play their part in that. So before it comes to the board, the audit committee get a chance to engage with that work. They meet on the 20th of June, which is when you're intending to bring it back. And so it's really just to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity for the audit, but the audit committee to pre-scrutinise that risk management work before we see it. And the third thing is really about the recommendation around the work we should really do around our performance indicators, our performance against national indicators. It's well known that in some areas that we have struggled to baseline some of that stuff and make it move in the right direction. So I'm encouraged to see that we're going to do some, let's call it deep dive, flat dive, whatever, somewhere early in the year, and hopefully before we ever crystallise the work around our next strategic plan, so whoever falls out of that dive into performance is able to influence the strategic plan that we need to sign off March, April next year. So it's just 3 general comments in the consciousness here to make sure we don't miss those points. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Chris, you happy with the comments from Alan?
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, certainly in terms of the third point regarding the indicators, yeah, absolutely would endorse those comments. I'm probably just on the first point, probably the most relevant for me to respond to. In terms of timing, yeah, that is absolutely our intention that next year we would have it all together. It's just been, as any first year audit is always, it's always a little bit tricky, and we kind of had a bit of a late start due to the onboard, due to sort of the timing of when we've onboarded on new audits from Audit Scotland and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, the intention is that to restore that back to a kind of September reporting for both elements. So just to assure you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your comments, Alan. Very helpful. Is anyone else on this report? I don't see any in the chat or hands up notes. Oh, Chris, Kate, what?
I just want to say, can I thank the team for all the hard work in producing this report. It's quite exceptional, and I know that some of our partners, organisation, Health and Social Care Partnership, would really like to be in this place. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I'll just echo the marks. And thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Recommendations that we note the content of the IPSA 260 and the report in the appendix 1. Agreed? Agenda item 4 is a financial monitoring report, and again we have Craig.
Thank you very much. Again, this is the standard finance paper that we bring forward every NJB, and it covers period 5 monitoring and our projections at this particular point. This report covers a number of areas. These are mainly our 23-24 projected position, our current capital position, our reserves position, and the paper also highlights the current position in the transformation fund. As at period 5, we're currently projecting an overspend of £495,000 for the overall IDRB. This is approximately an increase of 151,000 in our projected overspend since period 3. Social care budget is projected to year-end overspend at about £23,000. Health budget is projected to overspend at £472,000 at this particular point. Obviously, by year-end, we will use smoothing reserves if required to bring this position back to break-even. The overall projection is in line with the position currently faced by all IGIBs in the Greater Glasgow and Clyde area. Moving into some of the detail behind it, children and families are projecting £2.251 million overspend, mainly due to residential replacements and child respite overspends. We are planning the use of about £200,000 of our smoothing reserve at this position to help the overall position. Jonathan and his team are currently doing a thorough service review in this particular area. This is mainly offset by underspends in older persons, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, assessment care management, and mental health vacancies, and other business underspends. Secondly, looking at the health budget, mental health in patients is projected to be overspent by about £1.6 million at this moment, and prescribing is 750,000. This is mainly offset by vacancies across all the other areas in health. At present, we have not used any of our research other than the suggested 200,000 in the children and families there, but we will review this in the coming periods to help offset any overspends if required. Moving on to capital, Section 4 shows the current capital position. At this point, we're not showing significant spend to date. This is likely to be incurred later on in the year, especially with our big projects like the Community Hub capital project. Appendix 5 shows our overall earmarked reserves. This shows we started the year with 24.262 million and expect to finish the year at 16.096 million based on our projections. As is always the case, I appreciate this is a lengthy and detailed report, but happy to put any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Craig. Before we can start, can I just welcome Dr. Jones, who has now joined the meeting, and the first person to speak is Mark McCluskey. Mark.
Thanks, Robert. I've got a few questions in different areas, so maybe go one by one, if that's okay. The first is just on page 13 around mental health inpatient services. And I appreciate, Craig, this isn't maybe a question you'll know the answer to, but maybe one of your colleagues will. It says in the report these pressures result in the use of more expensive bank and agency staff and were forecast to overspend by 1.6 million. I've got two questions in that area. One is, well, three questions. One, how much is an average shift for a mental health nurse if we go through the bank or agency route? The second is, what are the barriers to recruitment that we're facing at the moment, i.e. why are we relying so heavily on bank and agency staff? And then the third, are we confident that the overspend won't affect patient beds at, for example, Orchard View and other parts of the service? So are we protecting the beds at those facilities and able to deal with the same patient numbers given the pressures? That's something.
Right, I'll look to take the response.
Can I pick up some of it and then pass it to Gail? So I'll start with the agency cost. We wouldn't be able to give you that level of detail here. We're happy to provide it. But nevertheless, the agency and the bank costs are exponentially more. There's been a significant amount of work that's done across the system around the reliance on agency nursing. We're seeing a reduction in the use of agency work and no focus on the bank. So that in itself should bring down some of the overspend across the system. To kind of move to your last point, and I'll let Gail pick up the other bits around the recruitment and retention issues. In terms of how we're managing it, the priority is Inverclyde patients at this moment in time. So how we're trying to manage the demand for the beds across the board is the priority is Inverclyde patients. And actually at times we have stop orders, which that is the classic term of people coming in mainly from Glasgow, coming into the area on the basis. So just to provide you with that level of reassurance. So we are operating for our own people, but necessarily not always from a whole system point of view. Gail, do you want to pick up the other bits?
Yes, thank you, Councillor McCluskey. I suppose what we're hoping to see over the next few months is an actual visible shift in the use of agency staff to bank and actually grown our own. So I think recruitment has been much better recently. So I think our only vacancies now are band 5 nursing vacancies, which we've had a significant amount of vacancies in the nursing and AHP and medical staffing. So I think we've still got AHP vacancies, but I think the nursing staff, which has caused the biggest cost in agency, we're focusing on bank going forward, and I think we will see a shift in that. With regards to our medical staffing, that has been significantly costly in terms of agency, and again, we don't have the devil in the detail here, but something that we can pick up later. But we're looking at different models across the mental health sites to say, you know, rather than always relying on consultants, we now have our lead advanced nurse practitioner in post. We've got 2 trainees in post, and we're looking to recruit more trainees. So I think what was a very lengthy recruitment period over the past, certainly 18 months, we're starting to see a bit more outcomes at the other side. And again, with, you know, working with the professional nurse leads, working with the professional leads in each of the disciplines to look at how we can start to grow our own a bit. So that's some of the work that we've got going on in the background.
Thanks, Gail. Just to pick up, when we talk about mental health and patient services with regard to what that board deals with, we're talking about Lyme Hill and Orchard View.
Yes.
That's both, is it? So just on Orchard View specifically for a moment, are we maintaining, have we got the same number of beds that we've always had, or have we had to scale back the number of beds because of shortages of staff?
Yeah, we'll always have the same number of beds, but whether we always fill them is something that we probably look at on a very regular basis to keep it clinically sound. And we'll do that both locally and system-wide to make sure that we're liaising with all the other mental health and patient units to make sure there's safety locally, but safety across the system.
Okay, thank you. Second question relates to so that's nothing we need to worry about.
That's a hard to talk to.
Second question, just in relation to Appendix 4, I think this is just in terms of understanding. There's obviously issues raised in the report around children and families' social work. But if I understand this correctly, our budget in year for social, in terms of children and families in both social care and health, appears to be reducing, and I just want to understand why that movement is taking place. So in social care service, children and families is going from 12.9 million to 12.7 in the revised budget, and in health is going from 3.9 to 3.3. And I just want to understand, given the pressures that are identified in the report, what that actually means. And just also on Appendix 4, resource transfer in the first table, 18.9 increasing to 19.1. Just like to understand what resource transfer refers to and why it's increasing.
These are movements which happen during the year. What I can do actually, if it's okay, is we'll come back offline and bring everybody, just give an update on some of the exact movements that happen. We have funding which goes in during the year around that, so I can give you a more specific answer if that's okay, especially around around the children and families. It looks like a reduction, but I can come back in detail if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I've just got a concern that if we are experiencing pressures that we've gone over both the social work panel and there's also the report here that this isn't a reduction in the budget. I noticed Ree's got the agreed indicator.
It's the base sessions children sales, just what's their base.
Right. Okay. So that's not reflected in here.
So that reduction in the budget is due to specialist children's services is now being hosted by another authority. So that's the reduction in the budget there.
Got you. Excellent. Thank you. And then just on Appendix 8, this is just a general comment about these reserves. Now, this might be something that's better handled in terms of the budget approach, but I'm just wondering if at some point we can have maybe a paper report that just goes into a little bit more detail about what's in the comments in terms of what you fully committed and what is expected to carry over. I know some of these are smoothing reserves and I understand that, but I think just as we're approaching the budget process and maybe as part of the working group process, if maybe we receive a paper around a bit more detail on each of the earmarked reserves. And then just very final question, which arises from the cost of living row in Appendix A. I'm just wondering if there's any plans around the winter in terms of allocation for funding for cost of living. I know that the council has committed pending approval 100,000 for another Warm Hands of Friendship proposal for this coming winter, and I'm just wondering if there's any plans from an IGD point of view to supplement that as we did last year. Thanks.
Yeah, but it is something that we are currently looking at the moment. So we'll come back as soon as we've made a final call on that. I don't care unless you want to say more on that.
Obviously, the impact of the personal living is at the forefront, so it's likely that we will look at our internal Section 12 and Section 22 budgets and make sure that we've got enough money. It'll be more targeted this year than it was last year. It was much more universal in its offer, but we need to get more targeted impacts, but the monies will be, we will make sure that that budget is linked to take this through.
Thank you, thanks. Thanks.
I have Councillor Quinn and then David Joe. Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question on the 9.3, which is the SWIFT replacement. This is because I'm a acronym police. Can someone explain what the OL discovery report is and how it's having an impact? So, and is that impact purely on time for delivery of the project, or will it have an impact on costs as well?
Well, obviously because it's a commercially sensitive project and what we're currently working with OLM at the moment, just around the as you say, the discovery phases and that. Once we've got to the end of that particular part of the project, we'll bring a full report back that shows all the progress that's been made at this particular moment.
So the OLM report is the contractor's report findings once they've looked at. So I'm trying to understand where that report's coming from. They are highlighted issues in delivery of the project. Is that what that's saying here? So OLM is the contractor.
Yes.
I think that we will bring a report back, and it will probably be in the next time.
Okay. So probably the question that I'm particularly interested in, obviously you've noted here that there will be a impact on the timing of the project, but is there a potential for an impact on the cost of the project?
We don't know that at this moment in time because we're still having those negotiations at the moment. So I couldn't comment either way on that particular one.
Okay, but can you rely on?
Yeah. Okay. David Gold.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies to Craig and Kate for not raising this prior to the meeting, as is my usual style. I'm just reflecting on the redesign of the homelessness service, the work that's ongoing, and I'm cognizant of the changes that the Home Office have brought in terms of accelerating asylum seeker decisions. So I'm wondering where we are in terms of financial and service pressures if this acceleration does come through and we find there's more granted asylum claims. How are we able to deal with that as an IJB?
Yeah. So if you don't mind me coming in, David, that is.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to take that. That's a substantive item, so that there'll be the opportunity to pick up the points on the agenda and be ready.
No problem. Thank you.
Alan? David, did that?
No, I'm happy with that, Chair. That's absolutely fine. I was really more interested from a financial pressures point of view and looking forward, but I'm happy to take that separately.
Thank you, David. Anyone said, I don't see an online or a hand up first.
Yeah.
Oh, aye, right, your hand's up now. Belatedly, but it's up now. On you go.
Thanks, Chair. I'm having technical troubles, and I'm also finding it very hard to hear what the Chamber is saying. So could Kate tell me what she says there about the homeless area, the homeless unit, and I couldn't actually hear what her response was to David.
So we're going to take it as a substantive agenda item. It's on the agenda, Anne. So we'll pick up the points that David said there.
That's fine. I can raise my points here. Thank you.
Aye. Let's look for item number 8 and thank you. So, has anybody any other questions on this report? What's the? So we're to note the current period 5 forecast of section 2023-24 will be detailed in the support, appendix 1 and 3, and the assumption this will be funded from reserves. Approve the proposed budget realignments and variants, appendix 4, and authorise officers to issue revised directions to the council and the health board as required on the basis of the revised figures in appendix 5. Roads position in the transformation fund, appendix 6. Notes the current capital position, appendix 7. Notes the current earmarked reserve position, appendix 8. And notes the key assumptions for the forecast detailed in section 10. We get that for, okay. Item number 5 is the King Care support. Roll action, number 5, roll action. Okay.
I'm happy to pick it up. I'm happy to pick it up. I'll make sure I've got my mouth on this time. So most of the actions continue to be full-time. Some we've had to make adjustments to some of the reports because the redesign of homelessness to pick up some of the points that David made. It's a kind of really fluid situation. So we've actually had to rethink about what our approach is and on the basis of migration. And we are still working out some of the costings, but we'll take that further later on. The update in the vaccination transformation programme, we're waiting for some of the data to come in that will provide that level of detail. And you know, that obviously that we've had that the ISA to be presented, that I would imagine the actions now completed, and our improvement plan, that will be a paper to March 2023. So these are most of the outstanding rolling actions and most of them.
Thank you, Kate. Martin.
Thanks, Robert. Just on the vaccination programme, Kate, that I think previously that was going to be for this meeting of the board. So just to clarify that what the update we've got today doesn't include the numbers on out of area vaccinations. Is that what we're waiting for? Yeah. Right, great, thank you.
Anybody, any question on the road actions? Okay, on the way here. Okay. No, that report is good. Number 6 is the King Care payment support of individual hospital discharge. And Alan.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to inform the Integration Joint Board of the King Care initiative to support one of the processes we are using to support early hospital discharge for non-complex service users. This involves a payment of £1,200 to the individual or an identified support person in terms of making provision with the family, neighbours, etc., to provide direct care from discharge from hospital. As we know, all clinical evidence and all other support shows that being delayed in the hospital is not ideal and not best for the service user. What we have looked at is where other local authorities in Scotland and down in England have used a payment for non-complex cases. These are the 20% of cases that are self-limiting and will resolve, but perhaps at the moment are being delayed in hospital. By giving a 6-week period of payment to a friend, a neighbour, a family member to provide that light touch support, that would hopefully allow the individual to be discharged from the hospital environment, supported at home in the absence of other services or in conjunction with other services to aid a discharge from hospital. The average price of a hospital stay is around about £500 mark, but can fluctuate. So in terms of this initiative, this would be one of many pieces of support that we would use to ensure that folk are not unnecessarily delayed within the hospital environment. The report is asking the Integration Joint Board to note the development of the KinCare scheme that supports hospital discharge, and to note that it's a payment scheme providing a one-off payment of £1,200 to the individual as an alternative to formalised mechanisms of support. And the scheme builds on the natural family and friendship supports for the cared individual. We will also, to the IJB, note that we will review this project and the success of its outcome and bring a further report in April 2024 on the success of the project. Be happy to take any questions.
Christina.
Thank you. This sounds like a really interesting initiative. I've got quite a few questions around it that I would like to ask. First of all, I know there are issues with staffing on the IJB right across the board. So who is actually doing this? Because it will require selection of people, it will require monitoring. How are you going to choose these people? Are we confident that the staff we've got have sufficient time to actually do this properly?
Yeah, that's a good question, thank you. Through our usual processes of assessment and care management, working with the individual, as I say, this is for what we would term the lower end non-complex support needs. And that very much would be monitored. The governance around it would be via our care managers, the social workers, the discharge team, and we would have a service manager overseeing the whole process. It's also been done under the auspices of the Self-Directed Support Act. So we have the existing process that we do to monitor, but it is a light touch approach. It's for a 6 weeks period. So in terms of impact on our current staffing, it's probably fair to say in terms of managing delayed discharges, there's a great deal of work goes into when somebody is delayed and the continual of that delay. So we would hope that would balance off that the benefit of taking on this additional scheme would actually play, as well as supporting the individual themselves, giving them the better outcome. In terms of our processes, it would help, I say, one of the other sort of tools in our toolbox that would allow us to be more streamlined and efficient in how we support successful discharge from hospital.
Thanks for that. Secondly, my question is, how are people going to find out that this scheme actually exists? I'm guessing here, it's probably not going to be publicised, that the people involved with discharge will probably pick people and say, do you want to take part in that? Is that how it's going to work?
As with everything, we do everything as on an individual basis. So through the team at the hospital would be working with the individual and discussing this as one of many options that they would, again, it's about personal choice. So we would have that individual discussion with the individual or their carer friend on their behalf if they give that permission.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that when some people find out this exists and they're offered it, they're really annoyed. Yeah. But that's another problem. I noticed that you say that it doesn't affect benefits. What I was wondering was, if you get £1,200, HMRC are likely to be interested in it. So is this money taxable?
Okay.
So the financial modelling, was done by North Lanarkshire and Mo, because it's a one-off payment. Okay, and it's to the individual. That is actually to get them out of the hospital. So my understanding from the local authority that implemented it, Christina, is that it has no impact.
No impact to tax at all. Well, that's certainly good news. Now, if someone gets this money, who's got the actual final word in whether or not it's done? Is it the person who's being discharged who says, I don't want to be part of this scheme? Is it the person? Is it like the mother, the father, the daughter, the neighbour who's going to help? Do they get the final word? Who gets the final word? Will it be the carer or the cared for? And just also, I was wondering, it's for, I think you said 6 weeks. you can never tell what's going to happen. Supposing somebody then has to go back into hospital maybe 3 weeks later, is the money recouped depending on circumstances and whether the person has to go back into hospital or into a care home or whatever?
At the end of the day, this is about individual choice, so the individual themselves would make the decision if it's for them or not for them. So we would put this forward as we do with any form of support or a service. Is this something that you feel that you would?
Care for.
Yeah. So and the second item again, the intention, this is a one-off payment for a 6-week period. As with everything, the intention is if somebody was then readmitted to hospital, we obviously look at things on an individual basis, but we wouldn't see this as a continual, because if somebody's readmitted to hospital, it may well be that they need other forms of support. Again, everything's on an individual assessed basis, but the spirit of this scheme is it's a one-off support, self-limiting. We do know, as I say, of our discharges are potentially delayed at the moment, about 20% of them fall at the lower complexity end. So we expect them to be a time-limited period of care that's required. But as we do with everything, we assess. So if the circumstances change, it may well be we take a different approach.
So you may or may not have to pay some of the money back if the care for is back into hospital.
The intention is that we wouldn't be looking to look to recoup money unless we had any particular evidence that required that.
Right, thank you.
Right, I've got a series of people next. I'm going to start with Diane and then Anne and then Martin. Diane.
Hi, I've got 2 questions. We have an enablement team that at the moment is going to deal with people who get discharged from hospital for 6 weeks, and they're meant to provide intensive support in terms of home care, home support, not to mention rehabilitation and AHP. So does this alternative provision mean that this team is overwhelmed, that they can't provide this service anymore? And the other question was, what happens at the end of 6 weeks if the person still needs some sort of input? I know Christine asked, actually.
At present, all our data shows, we do have an enabled team, and that team does an exemplar job in terms of supporting our community, but we do have people that are delayed within the hospital, despite the good work that they do. This, as I said, this is an additional piece of work that we can do to augment the work of that team. It's not to replace that team, it's just as an opportunity arises, as with any self-directed support, if an individual chooses to make arrangements for their own support, we would support them in that if it was safe for them. So it meant the myriad of ways that we support folk when they're delayed in a hospital environment.
And at the end of the 6 weeks?
And we hope, as I said, we're talking about the low end complexity. Again, at the end of the 6 weeks, the care manager would review with the various services what is the position of that individual. We would hope that in many cases that may well be the end of that period of support. If further support is needed, we would reassess the position and the appropriate support would be put in place.
Diane?
No, just that is something that would have happened under enablement anyway. People would be assessed after the 6 weeks. So it seems to be okay.
I think just to reassure you, we're using our existing processes to keep people safe within that. So we're not doing anything extraordinary. We're just targeting the non-complex and making sure that we get them out of hospital quickly on the basis of trying to support them back with their choice, of course, and back into the community with the actual support services that they may well bring in place, as opposed to with the expectation that it would be for the HSCP to provide it, but there'll be points that we will need to review in this, and because it's new, we'll have to keep a really close eye on it too.
Okay, Diane. Anne?
Thanks, Chair. I think I picked up some of the responses from Alan. My concern is the low complexity of the patient or the person coming out. just so I've got it right in my own head, we're asking, or we're saying we'll give you £1,200 to get a family member to look after you or do visits to you that would be expected of our care in the community. Is that right?
Yeah, but see, we're talking about the low level, so this could be potentially be to ensure that somebody has got a meal prepared for them, or some assistance in the house. So it's at that level where we're not. It's the very kind of light touch support that makes a big difference to an individual being discharged from a hospital. But when that's not in place, that potentially could prevent a discharge. So it's round about those light touch, or perhaps a medication prompt that would, a family member or a friend that could do as well. That is the intention around it. It gives a bit more flexibility to the individual about time of choice of time when that can happen. So it's as I say, it's very low level complexity.
Right, thanks, Alan. But the bit that I'm trying to understand, so I don't want to use, we're funding family members to go in to do lunch, dinner, whatever, medication, and after the 6 weeks, if they people needed, are we saying that after the 6 weeks they'll not need that? Or are we saying that gives us 6 weeks to try and get this put in for our home care staff to go in?
Obviously 6 weeks, that's the period of when this intention of this scheme would work. Throughout that 6 weeks, there would still be the continual assessment to see the success of it. At the end of the 6 weeks, we would hope that potentially that care might not be required, and that's great. We're about enabling and promoting independence for individuals. If we found that person still required a form of support, that is where, through our assessment, we would then pick that up with other forms of support.
Okay, thanks.
I have Martin then Dr. Nick. Martin.
Thanks, Robert. A good preface these questions, but I think we should do this. I just think, like everyone probably around the table, there's because to you, there's lots of questions to ask just to make sure that we're doing this right. But I also think we need to recognise that this probably wouldn't be the way we'd be doing things if we had proper funding nationally of social care, if we had a social care service that hadn't been neglected bluntly by government over the years. This feels like a stopgap rather than a long-term solution. I think the two questions I've got is one, sort of picking up on where kind of Christina left off, which is around the potential pressure on both sides. So in terms of the person being cared for, what protections will be in place to make sure that they aren't coerced or influenced into taking this by a family member who might, not have the best intentions at heart? So, how do we guarantee that we're not discharging someone into a home where someone might be, not happy, somewhere someone might not actually be happy to be? So, are we going to make sure that we have, conversations with those people who are being given on their own to make sure they're actually really happy about this? And what training will we be giving to staff to kind of assess that? And then in terms of the potential pressure on the carer, we're giving someone funding for 6 weeks, but if you're drawn in to a caring role that you haven't maybe done before for a 6 week period, at the end of that 6 weeks, if someone isn't, in your eyes, even if they are in the eyes of our service, fit and able and don't need further support, but if you think they do need further support, there's really going to be quite a lot of pressure on the individual at that point to potentially pick up more caring responsibility beyond the 6 weeks. And so it's, I suppose, how are we going to get that balance? How are we going to make sure that, to my mind, the view of the person who you're giving this grant to at the end of the 6 weeks is really important, because if they feel that they're walking away from a situation where they feel that the person they've been caring for isn't getting the appropriate support, that's a terrible position to leave someone in. So how at the end of that 6 weeks are we going to ensure that doesn't happen? And just the final question is on the funding. We've allocated 50,000. I think that's probably about 41 people. Is that enough? Given the level of delayed discharge that we're looking at, will 41 grants over this winter period gets through the if this is the solution, will that get us through the winter period? Or do we need to potentially look at further down the line increasing that? And if we do find that it works, January, February, March time, if the budget runs out, will there be an opportunity to increase that amount?
I suppose I'm going to come in because I'm going to start from a professional social work point of view, and I'm going to ask the chief social work officer to come in. So see these processes and what we do around part of that assessment. That's what social workers do every day, because even when we are undertaking an assessment of anyone's situation, we always have to be mindful of any level of coercion and harm that might occur. Now, we can't absolutely say without certainty that that wouldn't occur, but that would be picked up really quickly, because that is our view, that it needs to be a social worker that oversees that, and we're not delegating it down. And so it would be a combination of social work and our social care service and our service manager and our social welfare service, because at some point, if people are not making the recovery or the trajectory of the recovery, we're going to have to quickly start having a conversation with our social care service that provides care at home to ensure that we input at the end of that 6 weeks, or maybe before it if the carer is. So it is that it has to be subject to a level of assessment within that. And if we find that there is level of coercion, well, we would expect that there would be levels of coercions in other bits of that person's life. So, Jonathan, I don't know if you want to say anything else around that, because it is a professional social work role that would be undertaken.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, just to reinforce Kate's points, clearly the assessment around the needs of the individual being prepared for discharge will be central to this, and their views, as always, would be absolutely at the heart of that assessment. From a social work professional point of view, it's always going to be about the needs of the individual, the potential risk that may be present in their life around discharge, but also looking at how we can support best outcomes in terms of their recovery and supporting their independence as far as that's safe in the community. So it is that combination of social work skills and the professional assessment that's well embedded in adult services practice in Inverclyde. That doesn't change. What this does, I suppose, as Alan has talked about, is expand the range of opportunities, but really very much targeting that small number of individuals who have a very low level need, and it's about support to enable them to move from hospital safely to home. But in terms of the concerns that people have raised this morning about potential coercion and harm, that would of course remain part of the social work assessment, and we will continue to review that from a professional point of view.
So I'm happy to come back in about the money and the impact for carers. So within the report, you can see that we've actually identified that there may well be a need to undertake carer support. And whilst that carer, if we find that at the end of the 6 weeks, they may have a residual role, they may have had a residual role to begin with at the very beginning, and that's probably the likelihood of it. We're just asking them to maybe step that up to get the person back at home, because the deconditioning of people that are coming, particularly for our older people, is a significant issue. So this is a response to get, because if you've got a loved one that's stuck in a hospital bed, and that actually, because they might have had a broken arm or a broken leg and they're in their 80s, and you know that there's a reasonable recovery, they want to go home. So we're just trying to provide the right conditions to bring them home, but providing that level of professional safeguard. In terms of the money, obviously that's a delegated responsibility kind of myself, so we would make sure that if we are using that and it's successful and that we're not seeing the level of risk, that we would increase it, because it is against the home care budget, because it's an alternative to home care, so we're not using other budgets to fund it, we're using it in terms of our underspends within other people's budget, if that's helpful. That answers the question.
Thank you. I think this is really great. I really like that we are looking at other HSCPs and learning from them. And especially, and I don't know if I've seen the data, but especially if I think some of these long, complex discharges disproportionately affect those who are most deprived. I think my question is really just leading on from Martin, it's about this 42, and I think given the numbers 577 that we had last year, that could go really quickly, you know, a month or so potentially, and that's my question, but have we factored in a time frame for that, and have you modelled that, and planned for evaluation, because that's what Kit's kind of already answered, is the evaluation is going to be really important here to decide whether we go from that.
So to be honest with you, some of the modelling has been made on Lincolnshire and what they used in that time, and I don't think that the take-up will be as much as that they wanted. You know, they're much bigger than us, probably about 5 or 6 times bigger than us, and they only seen 40 people going through it, but bearing in mind they only implemented it in, I think it was January or February last year, as a response to some of their winter pressures. We're not doing that as a response of being in a really difficult position as delayed discharge. We're giving it as an option to people to get home quicker, because that's what our older people tell us. So we're doing it from the point of view not to kind of be better around the delayed discharges. We're doing it to kind of just get our people home in a way that it can be proportionate. So it is modelled, it's against a home care budget that's actually underspent. So the money's there, so if we're not putting it into home care, there's certainly available funds to ensure that that can be modelled up. But we will keep, I can keep it on the Chief Officer's brief to let you know about the impact. North Lanarkshire made it a substantive offer. They went and did it as a test of change, so they went to committee in May. And I think they got approval for it, and they're looking at it as a substantive offer. But not everyone will take it up, because families have very busy lives, and some families will see it as something that perhaps will benefit the cohesion of the care, and some will say, well, it's not for us, and that's all we're asking for here today. It's the services that are continuing to be in place will continue to be in place.
Thank you. I have an indication from Lynn Quinn and then Sandra. Lynn?
Yeah, thanks for that. I wasn't planning to say anything. I was highly supportive of it. I think if we've got a number of options, then that can only be a good thing. I think it's probably worth mentioning that this is probably out of a concern about resourcing in a certain area. It's not just about budgets, as you say. There's an underspend in the budget, but it's about being creative. You know, I speak to a number of people who are actually caring, you know, in this scenario, the low level, the 20%, they are taking their family members home because they don't want to see them in hospital, and they're caring for them out their own pockets. So if they're reimbursed for that this can only be a positive, and it gives the patient a choice, and more choices to the patient can only be a good thing. So I accept the concern, but we can't let a concern about a potential minimum number of people abusing a system to be something that affects the actual system and the patient choice. So my only question and the only concern I had is that if someone doesn't have access to that option, that the care is still there. So the 20%, that the care will still be there for those that don't have this option and don't want to take the option up for whatever their own personal reasons are. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Sandra?
Thanks. Just a comment again. I'm really pleased that they're looking at good practice from other boards and taking that up and implementing it in our area. Also pleased to hear that the resources and financial resource is there. I think the professional support that you mentioned is totally appropriate and can allay fears. Just a comment, about that, the balance of risk. The risk of staying in hospital, even for low complex patients, means loss of muscle mass, loss of mobility, which then increases the cost of care when they are discharged and delays recovery. So I'm fully supportive of this and interested to see how it works out in our area.
Thank you, Sandra. Al?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I too am supporting this. I think it's a great idea. I think the first thing to recognise, we're not actually changing what we do. We do this now. We discharge the families every day of the week. We do the assessment that Kate's talked about and the Chief Social Worker spoke about. We make these assessments every day of the week. All we're doing is we're adding a little bit of extra financial support to the carer, which is not always there. So for that reason alone, I would support it, but there are many other. We're taking pressure off acute hospital beds at the worst time of the year. That's a good thing to do. We're also getting people at hospital exactly on time, which is, you've just heard from Sandra, comes with the risk if they stay longer. So getting people discharged on time is also the right thing to do. We're trading the cost of £500 for the NHS. We're taking on the cost of £30 at the local level. That seems a reasonable thing to pilot. But we do want to look at, I suspect we want to look at the longer term implications of this, because were it to be successful, we might look to do more. So I think we have to be careful there. But the reality is we're taking cost locally, which is not significant, frankly, but it is significant in the health system. So I think that's also worth bearing in mind. I think if we can't sustain, if this is for low risk patients that are really getting home care, so maybe get support to move around the house, to enable themselves to cook, to clean up, I think if that support is to go beyond the 6 weeks, that should probably be a red line for that, because we shouldn't offer support that we can't sustain if we're chopping and changing. So if it was a 9 or 10 week requirement, we should be saying you're not suitable for this sort of grant because your needs are beyond 6 weeks. We shouldn't lose sight of that. And I think that gets to the issue that I think maybe you raised about how do you judge around the 6 weeks and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's really important to think about how you sustain it. And if it's beyond 6 weeks, we probably shouldn't be doing it. Final point is, if we can get 42 patients at hospital 3 or 4 days early, we buy ourselves 160 occupied hospital bed days. That's not insignificant. So I think for all these reasons, and I know you've all shared your own views, I too support this.
Thank you, Alan. Anyone else? No, so we're happy to note the development of the Kinky Act, support for the prevention of hospital delays. The Integration Joint Board is asked to note the Kinky payment scheme providing a one-off payment of £1,200 to the individual as an alternative to formalised mechanisms to support. The schemes were built on an active family friendship support for the care person. We note the Inverclyde HSCP will use to assess the government of the Kinky scheme for individuals to Charlton Hospital, and the report will come back to us in April 2024. Are you happy with that? Okay. Agenda item number 7 is the HSCP workforce plan, and I think we have Craig again.
Thank you very much. This is the workforce plan. This is a 1 year update on our new 3-year workforce plan which we approved last year. As you will see, the vast majority of our upstream actions are on track and are marked as green status. We have a few that are currently amber, and each of these are current updates against them. We continue to work on these to cover lines going forward. Just a few important ones to highlight are the business support review, which will recommence shortly now that we have a new service manager in place to take this forward with myself, and the homelessness review, which is scheduled to come to the next IGMP. We'll move on to that particular point. As always, happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Craig? Diane?
Okay, it would be nice if you could split into the training weeks that progress update. So I take it this will come to the next slide, partnership forum. The other question was about the Health and Care Staffing Act, the local group. I mean, there are a number of groups such as set up in partnership up at health board level, and it's disappointing that locally you've chosen not to include staff side.
Can I ask Jonathan to come in here?
Thank you, Kate. Diana, in answer to your question, the initial discussion between the Chief Nurse, Lorimer, and myself happened last week, so we've not actually convened that group yet, but we will be taking forward proposed membership and obviously note your comments, and I'll take that back to Laura whenever we next discuss the arrangements to set up that group. Thank you.
Diane?
Thank you. I understood from the script here that they had already met on the 1st of November, I think it was. But no, that would be good. Thank you.
So, we don't see any other questions online or in the room. The recommendation, the Integrated Joint Board were asked to approve the 1-year workforce plan, progress report, and approve submission to the Scottish Government. Vote the next report to the Integration Joint Board will be November 2024. Thank you for that. Agenda item number 8 is the refugee resettlement and asylum programme for Inverclyde, and we have Alan. Hello. Yes, Alan. Right.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report to the Integration Joint Board is to update on the various refugee resettlement and asylum programmes that are currently underway in Inverclyde. As we know, Inverclyde is a caring community and has very welcomely and friendly opened their arms to the various asylum seeker, refugee and resettlement programmes over the years. Obviously, at the moment, there's a number of these ongoing, and it's fair to say that we know that migration brings a richness and it can enhance a community, and working in partnership, we're definitely seeing the benefits of that. This report is for the IJB to note the content of the report and to look at the demand on services from varied UK Home Office asylum seeker work and resettlement programmes that are currently underway, and to note that detailed service development and financial planning is underway to ensure the appropriate services are able to respond with any pressures that are anticipated and to mitigate them as much as possible. We know, as I said earlier, that community integration and benefit enriches a community, and we can see that already through the various schemes that are currently underway locally in terms of the interaction and integration in local community groups. We have seen the various schemes that are ongoing at the moment are the Ukrainian resettlement. We see that there's unfortunately a terrible situation, war and conflict in Ukraine, and that has resulted in some Ukrainian individuals or families taking up the opportunity to come to Inverclyde on a temporary basis to settle while that conflict is ongoing. And currently our teams support those individuals working in line with the Scottish Government to ensure either they're settled within housing within the local community or in short term in a local hotel until they move on to a more substantial home in Inverclyde. We're also working with the UK Home Office in terms of unaccompanied young asylum seeking children. We're working with colleagues and children and families to ensure that any young unaccompanied children are supported and protected as appropriate locally, and working with the Home Office on that. The schemes also cover the asylum contingency hotel that we have locally, working with the Home Office, and where the original 69 individuals that were staying in that hotel were supported by the HSEP in terms of their health and social care mental health needs, as well as working with the third sector and community groups to again support the individuals in terms of ensuring that they are supported during their time in Inverclyde, to make sure that their mental health is supported and to give activities that they can take part in and also give back to the local community. The Home Office have more recently announced that their intention to double up in the hotel locally, which has been publicised in the press. At the moment, within our local hotel, only a small part of that has actually been taken forward at present. We're also working with the Home Office and their agents' mayors in terms of dispersed accommodations where individuals are living within the community until such times as the UK Home Office makes a decision in terms of granting either a long-term stay in the UK or to reject that application. The Home Office at the moment are streamlining their approach to how that is happening, and the HSEP is working with colleagues within COSLA across Scotland about how that approach is taken forward, and to ensure that we support individuals when they either get a positive decision or a negative decision. I would be happy to take any questions. And my colleague Emma Cummings, Service Manager, is here today online if there's any sort of specific questions.
Thank you, Alan. Of indication, David obviously was premature the last time, but we'll give him the first opportunity this time. And then Anne. David.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for jumping the gun somewhat earlier in the meeting. Alan, obviously this is a fluid situation. I'm very interested to know, in terms of where we are at the moment, what the anticipated level of demand is right now, compared to our capacity? Because obviously there's work ongoing to ramp up capacity, but I'm just wondering where we are right now. And secondly, from a finance point of view, I'm interested to know when we'll be in a position for the board to be informed of the projected financial impact of this as well, because again, in section 4, I appreciate the work is ongoing, so let's get a sense of when we'll be in a position to say, right, this is what we think this is going to cost in terms of finance and impact on resources.
Alan? Yep. Thank you, Chair. Is it, you're correct when you say it's a fluid position at the moment. I'll maybe ask Emma to come in. Emma's been working with colleagues nationally in terms of communication with UK Home Office and COSLA in terms of potential anticipating kind of where we are when people are liable to get positive decisions. So maybe bring Emma into that to answer that question. She's very, very close to it.
Thank you. I suppose it's fair to say it is a changing picture week on week. We were given some information from the Home Office around likely positive and negative decisions. That's not in the public domain. But it's fair to say that no one in the country is seeing the numbers of positive decisions that were expected prior to the year end. And we're waiting further detail from the Home Office on that with new projections. We have seen quite a number of positive decisions in Inverclyde, most notably in the young men living in the hotel, and that's because of the type of countries that they've come from. It can be really, really challenging. We are supposed to get 28 days notice from the Home Office, ourselves and MEAs, and sometimes that's as little as 0 days or 3 days to know that someone's had a positive decision, and there is a huge challenge in getting any accommodation for individuals at that point. We're working really closely with Riverclyde Homes, and they have started to bring on specific properties that we can use in those circumstances. There'll continue to be a challenge around size, particularly where that's families with positive decisions, and that's not something new to us at all. I hope that answers some of the questions.
Thanks, Emma. It certainly does. And I guess from a finance point of view, Chair, have an answer on that, that'd be very helpful.
Yep. In terms of the various work schemes that we have in terms of asylum and UK resettlement, there's various funding streams that come through, specifically, Scottish Government from Ukrainian work, previous funding streams in terms of Syrian, Afghan and Yemeni individuals. There's pockets that come through in terms of the UK asylum, but it's probably fair to say one of the challenges that we do face as people get a positive decision. Today, the UK government, that part remains unfunded at this present moment, but I'll maybe just confer with Craig to confirm that.
Sorry. Kate?
So it isn't funded, but actually what happens is, and I think that we still have to do the modelling because we're not clear about the actual impact that it's going to have. And I want to kind of say, I think it's much more proportionate to manage than other HSAPs that have recently been in the paper because of the footprint that we have. And obviously in a positive decision, they become citizens in their own right, so they're eligible to housing revenue budget that is actually comes from government to begin with, and retrospectively, may I add, to us. So I think that we need to do more work before we get this conversation that we think that it's going to be more than we actually think, because I think that I'd be keen for it to be actually nailed down on what it looks like, even on the basis of some of the projections that we've been given about positive destinations. We're a bit different from other HSCPs. We do have a pipeline of houses. The problem that we have is that it's getting it phased in at the time that we need it, so that there has been some impact on homelessness. And part of the homelessness design is Gail and I will look at what we probably need moving forward, because it is a different set of circumstances that we were managing. We were looking at our own Indigenous population, give and take, that we would have had some positive decisions, but the fact that it's been scaled up, we need to look at what does that model now look like,
and where would the funding sources come from. So just to make it clear, there will be impact on staff. There is money in reserves, and we're clear that we would be putting additional funding in to support people to settle well in Inverclyde.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair. That certainly gives me the assurance I was hoping to get. So thank you for that.
Anne, Sandra and then Christina. Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of observations and maybe one question. The observation, and I think David had mentioned on it, resources. My thoughts are on the resources of staffing. How is this supported by our staffing? How it seems to be there's quite a lot of work that's getting put into this, and how are we resourcing this? But you know, what kind of staffing are we resourcing it from? And sorry.
Oh, we've got your back. On you go.
Okay, so what kind of resourcing are we doing it from staffing levels? And what I see there was how are we assessing under 18s? How does that work? How is that done, or who supports it?
Thank you. That's the staff levels and how do we support under 18s?
Yep. First thing I'd like to say is to all the HSEP staff and colleagues from third sector who have been involved in this piece of work, they've done an exemplar job in supporting the individuals that have found themselves in a very unfortunate circumstance through conflict in the world. We took a decision very early on to use some of the funding streams that were made available specifically for refugee asylum to support a team to go in and do health assessments, mental health assessments on the individuals in the hotel, as well as Ukrainian families coming into the UK and coming to Inverclyde. We have used those. So those funding streams were for that reason, and that's where we've put together a team who have worked in conjunction with third sector voluntary agencies as well. There's teams there as well that are doing sterling work in terms of supporting these individuals. So we have found today that has made sure that people are kept safe, highlighted health issues, linked with other health services and other social care services in third sector to ensure individuals, while there are within the Inverclyde community, they're kept safe, healthy, and their well-being's looked after, and in terms of also having a meaningful activities whilst they're here. All that has been covered within existing refugee asylum seeker funding.
Sorry, Alan, no, you never answered my question there. My question was about staffing. So you say you've got a team. Is it a team of 1, a team of 10, a team of what? Is it a service manager that has to deliver this with this team, or what? So that's what I'm looking for.
I could
say you've got a team. What's the team?
Yeah. Well, if you want individual full-time equivalent, I can pass over to Emma if you want. And we've got professional nursing staff who are involved within the team. Emma would be able to give you the finer details of the numbers. These are all individuals who expressed an interest in part of this work.
That level of information, if you can maybe just contact Anne directly.
Yep.
With the public domain.
Okay, that's fine.
So if that's all right, Anne, we can get that information sent directly to you. You happy with that?
Well, I think it's more important that the whole IJB hear about the team, because we could say we've got a team working at this and what actually is the team. But yeah, if I'll take you, Chair, if that's what you're saying, can we email the whole IJB the team?
Yeah, I think Kate wants to explain a bit further.
So what we've been doing, is that at each stage that we've seen that there's been an increase, we've been increasing staffing. So it might be useful, not only do we provide the team, but we provide the additionality that we've provided in that team over the last year. So we recognise that the complexity of the individuals that are coming in terms of trauma and past history meant that we needed a team manager that was a social worker and 2 social workers, which wasn't previously relevant. We've also agreed an additional band 6 to go into the health component of the team. So I just want to reassure you that this is something that is looked at actively,
around some of the presentations that we have. Emma is the service manager that oversees that. That's why Emma's here today. But we will provide you with the detail of the team. But it's quite a significant size team now.
Thank you.
Under
The
18s. Yeah, under 18s.
Can I pass you to Jonathan, because this is a responsibility of the Head of Children's Services.
Thank you, Chair. And in response to your question, Anne, as outlined at 3.4 in the report, where there is reference to the number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people, we have well-established processes between children and family social work and the dedicated New Scots team to provide support and assessment of need. Following the recent UK-wide ruling that people who are considered to be under 18 not remaining in hotels, we clearly have a responsibility to provide appropriate placements for young people who then, if they're under 18, become looked after and have full access to services as our Indigenous population. Those processes are well established in Inverclyde, and Emma and I regularly meet to review those and the level of detail. And as Alan has outlined in his report as well, the co-working between the social work and care staff in New Scots and our request for assistance team continues to provide that ongoing support and any assessment of risk and need.
Okay, Sandra and Christina.
Thanks. My comment question is about 3.5.2. We all know that we always encourage our population to access the right service at the right time. And in my professional capacity, obviously I'm interested in the support the community pharmacy offers, and we all know the support that offered during the pandemic. To my shame, I do not know the procedure where these individuals can access Pharmacy First in 2 of the 19, because they have to be registered with a GP in order to access Pharmacy First Plus services. So my question is that temporary? Is there something in place? I'm at an LIG meeting at the end of the month, which was going to be my question there. How is this enabled? But I'm asking it here now because it will be 2 or 3 weeks before I'm at that meeting. So how many individuals does this cover? And is it just a temporary thing until they're registered? And 2 of the community pharmacies, were they asked about who would take part in this? To my shame, I don't know which 2. And I visited them all last month, every one of the 19, in my champion role. And if I'd known this, I would have asked myself.
Aye, Alan?
Yeah, thank you. As I said earlier, the team that involves supporting individuals, they very quickly, as part of their assessment, ensure that there's registration with the GP and the wider use of the multidisciplinary healthcare team. I'll maybe pass over to Emma, who may be able to, if we don't have the individual answer in the pharmacy, get that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I could find out certainly, but I just wondered if it was available. And also, sorry, and if there's anything that we can do to help this process when I'm at the meeting later this month.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, Chair. The issue about the 2 of the pharmacies is that if someone's not registered with a GP, they need to have a pharmacist prescriber. So there's only 2 actual pharmacies in Inverclyde that can offer a pharmacist prescriber. So that's why specifically it's 2 of the community pharmacies that we use for the men who are not registered with a GP. Only whilst they are getting registered with a GP, because for the last few weeks it's been taking up to a couple of weeks. But I know that Paul, I know there's a paper later on the agenda around primary care, and my belief is that all GP practices are open as of yesterday.
That's what I suspected, thanks.
Okay, so Christina.
I was just wondering if anyone knows the answer to this. I'm sure we've all read that the Mears Group are looking to get maybe 50, 60 flats within the Inverclyde area, with a view to supporting various assorted asylum seekers at different stages of the process. If a company like that acquires flats in an area, is there any way that we can check that these flats are of a reasonable standard, or is that just left to MEARS to buy what they like?
My understanding is the Home Office needs to check about the level of resident or the level of infrastructure within a flat, you know, so it has to come up to an exacting standard. And obviously, if it becomes a house of multiple occupancy, it will have to go through council processes to get that authorised too. So there is checks and balances within that.
I'm slightly comforted now that we have a new Home Secretary.
Sorry.
Yeah,
thanks, Chair. Just 3 quick governance points. So I'm really concerned, and of course I know this because I heard previously, I'm concerned about the fact that we're not getting the statutory notice that we're supposed to get. That's simply transferring, let's call it the risk from London to Inverclyde. And so my question is a real question that maybe we can answer, but if we're told with no day's notice we should get 28, are we permitted to take 28 days to implement that, or is that also not part of the option that we've got? That's my first question.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to meet with the Deputy Director for the Home Office, with Louise Long, the Chief Executive. The agreement is actually 26 days between, and MEARS lets us know. Can I say that I review regularly the amount of days notice, and whilst we've had no days notice, it's an exception really, and it's becoming much more in the more an exceptional circumstance than the norm. I think at the very beginning, as you can imagine, with no lead-in for this, that we weren't getting the day's notice, but it's starting to calibrate much better. And I've got a meeting tomorrow, so I hope MEARS to account around and making sure that we get that information on a real-time basis. The issue isn't necessarily the notice, the issue is about just trying to get everything in line with, which is quite a complex process, to get people settled in housing and not presenting it within the homeless situation. So that is our major concern. There is at times 7 days grace that MEARS can provide through Home Office rulings, but we hope that we will, between the partnership working, that we'll get much better at trying to manage that timeline, but we are under the same timeline as everyone else is in the UK.
Thanks. It's encouraging to understand that. My only other question is about the decisions that are made. So the first one is, if the decision is made for that individual to remain, then as we discussed, there's a financial challenge for us locally. I think it'd be really helpful to understand, it's come up today, to understand what that looks like, because that to me looks like an end-year challenge. So every day we don't understand that gives us fewer days and less capacity to respond to it. And I don't understand the size of that challenge. I do understand the challenge in Glasgow because I sit in Glasgow, and theirs is in the tens of millions. It's a magnitude much greater than it's going to be here. But I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that we've got a challenge in the system that we can't quantify. So I just throw that out. If a positive decision, they stay, financial challenge. If it's a negative decision, I'm really keen to understand not just what our obligation is to those that have to remove themselves, but what our moral obligation is beyond that. How far can we go to continue? These are human beings that have found themselves here, that have been asked to leave. What can we do when they've been asked to leave, and what's the extent of that? Maybe a description that would help, certainly me, if not others.
So within the Social Work Scotland 1968 Act, there's provision for the Chief Social Work Officer to intervene within these issues. Normally, a young person is deemed no recourse to public funds. Within the immigration status, it says that's what it means. But on an individual case-by-case basis, that Chief Social Work Officer can give directions for that assessment to be undertaken, and various forms of support can be provided as a safeguard under the legislation.
So just to be absolutely clear, if somebody is no longer fit to remain and has to be removed, they'll continue to reside in whatever accommodation they've got for the moment until such times. They won't be made homeless and they won't be made, if you like, unable to access services.
No, they will be taken either for deportation or we will assess, but what we will provide will be dependent on the individual.
So my final point is really with the impact and the challenge of this. I think it'd be helpful to get a verbal update or a paper update in the next board. I think it's something we shouldn't lose sight of in here, because I think it has the capacity to grow legs and not understand. I'm really focused on the people side, but I can do nothing about that. But as a board, we must be focused on the resource side and understand what the challenge looks like. So thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Anybody else? The recommendation Inverclyde Integration Joint Board will ask to note the conduct of support and demand on the service from Bay UK Home Office Asylum Seeker Work and resettlement programmes. To note that a detailed self-development financial plan is underway to ensure that forward services are able to respond to the pressures of anticipated and migrated as far as possible. Agenda number 9 is the progress on the primary care improvement plan, and again it's
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update of our progress on the delivery of the Primary Care Improvement Plan, the PCIP, and how this contributes to the overall progression of the transformation of primary care services. As IJB will remember, there's been a number of reports that have come over the last year or so in terms of the progress of the Primary Care Improvement Plan. The Integration Board is asked to note the successes and progress achieved in delivering a multidisciplinary approach to complement the general practice care through the delivery of the Primary Care Improvement Plan. There's quite a lot of information in this report. If I could maybe take the board to section 13.3 or 13 in general, this sort of shows some of the areas where we've made significant progress in terms of population engagement, in terms of the primary care transformation programme, in terms of making sure that our community is aware of the alternative services and professionals that complement GP care to deliver the best outcomes for our individuals. We've over 50 full-time equivalent multidisciplinary team colleagues working within primary care now to support the GP practices. We recognise our workforce and partners are most valuable assets in terms of changing the culture and how we utilise multidisciplinary teams. The work that's going on in terms of the vaccination programme, the various vaccination programmes, the very important community link worker work where community link workers are embedded in GP practices to support individuals on those issues that mean an awful lot to them but perhaps not medical related. The work of the advanced nurse practitioners, the community treatment and care services that are situated through Gourock, Greenock and Port Glasgow areas, the work of the advanced practice physiotherapists, as well as the work that's going on in pharmacotherapy in terms of supporting prescribing and discharge from hospital. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm joining my colleague Pauline Atkinson, who's on screen today.
Martin,
thanks, Robert. Thanks, Alan, for this report. I think, first of all, just to commend everyone who works in the service and also everyone who works in our primary care services across Inverclyde for all the work that they're doing under really challenging circumstances. I think certainly as an elected member, my inbox is always full with people complaining about not being able to access services, but I know within that this is just one part of a wider health service that's under a lot of strain, and I think this report gives us an idea of that. And I think it's also important, given that this is looking over the last year, to bear in mind that this is also a year in which the Scottish Government cut 65 million from its primary care budget, which I think we can see is in this report where that's having some impact, particularly around things like recruitment of the MPs, which was spoken about before here. I've just got a few specific questions. Firstly, I know we said earlier we get the details of the ad hoc vaccination statistics in January, but more generally around local delivery of vaccinations. For the COVID vaccines and others, we've obviously gone over this in the past, that is being delivered locally at the town hall, but there's others that aren't. I was just slightly concerned by 13.3, the third bullet point says transfer of vaccinations to see the largest general practice workload shift. However, feasibility and local delivery models need further scoping as part of a board review. I just want to understand what that means, and does that mean that that there's questions over whether it will be feasible to deliver some of these vaccines locally in future, and if that's the case, obviously that's quite worrying. The next question is just around ANPs, and we know that the great work that both the ANPs and the community link workers do to reduce the burden on GP practices. The report notes at 8.3 the loss of ANPs to local GP practices. I'm just wondering why that is. There's not a lot of commentary in the report about why ANPs are leaving the central service to move out to GP practices. Is it about pay, conditions? You know, what is it? What accounts for that turnover? And is there anything that we need to think of as a board for how we retain ANPs in the Health and Social Care Partnership? And I think that's everything for me. Thank you.
Al, thank you, Chair. If I could take the ANP question first of all, as we know, ANP colleagues, they're very, very highly skilled and invaluable in terms of the support they give our community. It does take quite a long time to train somebody in an ANP, and it takes an awful lot of commitment as well from the individual themselves. What we have seen, and it's not unique to Inverclyde, where perhaps somebody goes through their training, gets qualified, and then seeks employment elsewhere. We certainly try to make it as an attractive post as possible within the Agenda for Change pay scales that are contained within. If somebody chooses to go to an independent contractor, that's a kind of personal choice between them and that employer. What we try to do is try to make sure that all of the folk that we are putting through training get every opportunity to advance their skills in a professional way, but it is a continual challenge. And I think it's probably fair to say we probably need to do a wee bit more work looking at the future model about how that area progresses. It is a relatively new area of progression for the nursing profession and other allied health professionals as well. So it is a piece of work that's ongoing. In terms of the vaccination question, and I'll maybe bring Pauline in a minute into this. As you know, vaccinations over the last few years have been dominated with the work around COVID and also the flu vaccination. We have that sort of central vaccination policy. We also have our HSCP vaccination team that's very much at the forefront of ensuring that anybody that's not able to get to a vaccination site is supported at home. And Welsh will bring a paper later on to the IGIB. Currently, we're sitting about 1,500 COVID and 1,500 flu vaccinations for housebound individuals. There's work still ongoing in how future vaccination models will look. I'll maybe, if it's okay, bring in Pauline, because Pauline's heavily involved in this, is closer to it.
Pauline?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with regards to the travel vaccination in particular, the board have conducted an EQIA, which is obviously a quality and impact assessment, which has identified that Inverclyde would obviously benefit from access to a venue within the Clyde area. So that is something that is being scoped out at the moment with our board colleagues. In terms of the non-routine vaccinations or the ad hoc vaccinations, that will encompass and follow as part of the wider transformation vaccination in terms of the adult service. And as Alan indicated, we very much had a vaccination service that was implemented during a pandemic. It's now at the stage that we can reflect on what we have learned and where we actually need to go forward. Thank you.
Martin?
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for those answers. I'm still not totally clear on this third bullet point about feasibility. So, are we is what we're saying that there are question marks over whether we are going to be able to deliver some of these vaccines locally in future, because I think if that's the case, wrapped up with other service changes that have happened or are currently being consulted on, it's more services being transferred out of Inverclyde into Paisley and Glasgow. And in terms of the ad hoc vaccinations, we already know that a lot of, unless this has changed over the last 6 months or so, we already know that a lot of people requiring ad hoc vaccinations are being asked to travel to the mosque in central Glasgow, which is not an easy place to get to from Inverclyde, neither easy nor quick, to receive vaccinations that they currently used to receive at the health centre. I would guess that certainly the elected members of this board would probably be concerned about vaccinations that were previously delivered locally being delivered in the future in Glasgow. So just again, is what this third bullet point saying? Is it saying we don't think in the future it may not be feasible to deliver some of these locally? Is that where this is drifting?
I can come back to that, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you. I think this is part of probably previous conversations where yourself and other members of the board have raised, the issues about travel locally. So what we've been doing is, as each vaccination cycle goes through, we feed back to the board about the successes of it, and also is there something locally that we can ensure that our population receives the bulk of the vaccinations locally as possible. There certainly isn't any issue. Nobody is going to do without a vaccination, and I think we've previously mentioned that where somebody isn't able to travel, that vaccination, no matter what, with the exception of probably the travel vaccinations, would be done locally and for the housebound team. But I think it's fair to say that Pauline would be feeding back to the board about the instances about folks still required to go to Glasgow. The numbers for that for last year, off the top of my head, from a GP source was round about sort of the 70 to 80 level, and it's stayed consistent at that sort of number. There's about 170 between the acute system and GPs every year that are required to go to the Glasgow. So that's a total number. So it's about the dialogue about whether or not in the future will that model be maintained. There's absolutely there's no doubt that if somebody needs a vaccination, they'll get a vaccination. It's just as we refine the vaccination programme in the future, how's it going to look in terms of probably the ad hoc vaccinations and the travel vaccinations. That's the two areas that we just need to make sure that Inverclyde's got a voice in how that's developed.
I think what I'm hearing from that is there are questions over the future of ad hoc vaccinations locally, and I think that as we've gone over before, that is concerning. But I think that some numbers, you mentioned some numbers at the end. I think it's even more important that we in January get the specific numbers so that we can actually look at year by year how is this being developing. Because without that data, it's quite difficult to understand if this is a significant problem or not. But even if it is, 70 people, that's still 70 people that have to travel in an area for services that were previously available locally. But thank you for that answer. I'm sure we'll come back to it in January.
I'm going to let Kate come in here before I go into the other speaker.
Okay, so I think we'll take on board all the points. Councillor McCluskey, and we'll provide that in the report with that level of detail. There's no point of us getting into the discussion around the detail when we don't really have the detail here today. So we'll provide that in January.
With Dr. Metcalf and Christina and Lynn. Dr. Metcalf.
Thank you. Yeah, my question was in relation to what certain words already raised with the workforce, particularly vaccination practitioners and the physiotherapists and the significant movement. So they're really core to making this model work. And you did highlight it there that it's the choice sleep, but I suppose what just reinforcing it would be nice to see some work with the staff asking why there's movement out, and because I suppose we're going to be meetings, it's going to be a long-term issue, it's going to continue, and it's just a short-term thing. And also just highlighting what you did as well about the training. Advanced practitioners are a fantastic resource, but you're right, the training and the resource that goes into training them, both individually, and it's highlighted the time out, but also the ratio of trained to untrained. So with less than 25% of them are actually fully trained, the pressure on those people as well. And I wonder, that another time, do you have a timeline for when that ratio might swap around? Do we have more trained than untrained? Thank you.
I would think it's probably fair to say it's work in progress. I think we've seen recently that we do actually, in terms of the support and mentorship around somebody going through their training and ultimately when they're in practicing, and then if they do choose to move on, we do a lot of work about getting behind why decisions have been made, and sometimes it just comes down to personal choice. Other times it's it's not suited them, or another time, I'll be frank with you, maybe that agreement they've seen a better opportunity they want to go for. We certainly, Pauline and the team and our lead for ANPs, we want to look back at the current model. It's been a wee while now it's been in place, and I think it's probably fair to maybe to look at it, do a review and a reset on it, just to see whether or not is there, and maybe look at other models across the other HSCPs to say, is this right for Inverclyde? So that's a piece of work that we'll take back, and we'll probably in a future IJB come back and report on.
Right, okay. Anne? You're on mute, Anne.
Yes, sorry, I'm blathering away here. I think I picked up on what Dr. Metcalf had says in Alan's response. That my concern yet again is the 8.3 about the AMPs, and you talked about the flexibility that we have to try and keep them. Is there some way that we can have, I know we should have exit interviews with our colleagues that are moving on. Do we have any information on the exit interviews that we have with colleagues that have left us to go to GP practices, and why they went? And how flexible are we, Alan, when we're saying that we're flexible and we're staff doing this and supporting them? So these are a couple of things. He says we're flexible. How flexible? And do we do exit interviews to find out exactly why these staff members have left us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Anne. Yeah, we do that. We've quite in-depth discussions with all colleagues about when they make decisions to leave, just to try and get a feel for some learning from that. Individuals, when they're going through this training, get an incredible amount of support, and the team are really dedicated to ensure that individuals get the training, and that also includes from our colleagues within the GP practices who do a lot of mentorship. So throughout the whole process, individuals are supported, and we're very keen to find out from folk as they decide to move on, a personal choice on new opportunities, to see if there's any learning we can take on board. I don't know whether or not if I could pass over to Emma or Pauline if they've got any other comments on that that could augment that answer.
I'm happy to come in there, Alan. I manage the aim of this. I think there's a number of things. Firstly, generally GP practices are able to pay more than we are able to under Agenda for Change. That has significantly impacted us in the past. And there's a variety of other reasons. Sometimes it's flexibility around hours and things which we may or may not be able to give internally. And sometimes we do have challenges around what people think the role is, and then once they're partway through their training, how they feel about that. And sometimes they feel that a GP practice is perhaps where they want to be. It's maybe not the home visits that we carry out that they want to undertake. So there's a whole range of things which I think Anne and I have discussed some of the issues in the past as well. So I don't know if Pauline wants to add anything to that. We certainly are already undertaking a review of the model to make it more fit for purpose going forward than it may have been when we anticipated what it looked like back in 2016.
Anne?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your response. Maybe it's just the job that I'm in up at the Health Board as Employee Director for the trade unions, but I have heard that there are some cases where we aren't just as flexible in Inverclyde to keep staff. But thank you for your response.
Thank you, Anne. Christina?
I must apologise, I've completely forgotten which of our colleagues' names mentioned this on screen. Sorry about that. One of our colleagues mentioned something along the lines, she said that people from Inverclyde might benefit from access to a wider Clyde area. Now, a wider Clyde area to me means up and down the River Clyde. We're already benefiting in that people have to go up to Glasgow for certain vaccinations. So I may have completely misunderstood what she said, but she did mention about benefiting from access to the wider Clyde area. What exactly does that mean?
Christina, do you know who said it?
No, but I can assure you one of the women on screen absolutely said that.
Polly, did you say it? Yes, Polly.
Oh no, who was it? I didn't imagine this, honestly.
Polly, would you like to?
I'll pay more attention in future, I promise.
I'm going to try and deal with it.
Thank you, Chair. So, okay, maybe offline, Christina, we could find out about that comment, come back to you, just get a clarity. Apologies. I think it probably needs an internal conversation to just get to the bottom of it and come back to you.
Happy with that, Christina?
I'm fine.
Okay. Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for the report. It's for noting. So it is great to see all the fantastic work and how we're doing our best to support our GP practices as we should. I'm just using this opportunity to give a wee shout out for our colleagues here at Your Voice. So I was lucky enough to attend a community meeting where someone from Your Voice was there taking us through choosing the right service, and we had an opportunity to watch this video. And I know we ask a lot of staff, but I'm sure acting and presenting wasn't on my job description, but they did a fantastic job with that film and explain exactly what they do. And not only is it just about relieving the pressure, but ensuring they get the right care from the right person, and the skills and the knowledge that they have and how they will be a benefit to the community. And to say that that was actually very well received by the community, so that those there weren't aware of half of the services that were available, and they welcomed those additional services as well. So I just want to thank Your Voice, because they are doing a really great job, because we're doing all this fantastic work, but if it doesn't reach the members of the public and the service users, then it's pointless. So they are doing a fantastic work getting that message out there and bringing that message to them in their comfortable own community settings. So thanks very much for all that work as well.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, just a comment. Again, going back to the discussion around the movement of the advanced nurses practitioners. The new ways of working came into Inverclyde. We piloted that way back, and I was part of that pilot in the pharmacy team when we were flooded with pharmacists in Inverclyde, and working with other professionals that then came into GP practice after that, the paramedics and the advanced nurses and other ones, was of a huge benefit. Unfortunately, pandemic pulled people out of GP practices at that point, and I suppose now we're recovering from losing that staffing during those 2 or 3 years. So my question is, you mentioned 50 full-time equivalents in primary care across Inverclyde are supporting GP services, and I was wondering if it matters or not. I don't know what percentage of them are GP employees and what percentage of them are funded by Health Board and government, as the pharmacy team is. And does that matter to what you're looking at?
Thank you, Chair. The 50.44 whole-time equivalent are staff who are employed via the Primary Care Transformation Funding.
Right.
So they're the HSEP colleagues.
Right.
Yeah. Obviously, their work then augments the wider work of the practices as well to support them.
Yeah, so they're working within the system that I worked with, and your jobs all over are available to them.
It's very much a multidisciplinary team. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Margaret?
Yes, excuse me. I just wanted to say on behalf of the board and all of our staff at Your Voice, thank you very much, Councillor, for your remarks. And I'll certainly get them passed on to everyone. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, to note the report, and that's the note success and the progress period below multi-disciplinary approach to complement general practice. Yeah, through the level of the private care that's moving from. Number 10, the joint inspection of adult services. Sorry. No. Oh, no. No. You.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to advise the IJB that the Care Inspector and the Health Improvement Scotland have commenced a joint thematic inspection of integration within Inverclyde, with a secondary theme through the lens of how we are delivering outcomes for adults living with mental illness, age up to the age of 64. Their methodology sets out an inspection question. How effectively is a partnership working together strategically and operationally to deliver seamless services that achieve good health and wellbeing outcomes for adults? It's underpinned by a quality improvement framework through a position statement and other supporting evidence currently being worked on for the submission. They're reviewing 30 case records using a team around a person approach. A staff survey is now open and a range of scrutiny focus groups with service users, carers and other stakeholders are currently underway. We had our first partnership meeting on the 31st of October 2023 and a further 3 meetings are scheduled through the inspection period, and publication of the joint inspection report is expected in early May 2024. So the IJB is asked to note the commencement of the joint inspection within the HSCP and consider any future updates following publication of the report. Happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Sandra, you don't see any questions. Anyway, we just note the commencement of the joint inspection of adults and Inverclyde Health and Social Partnership. The seventh future update the following publication of the joint inspection of adults. Number 11 is the proposed report for the budget 24-25.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is our normal paper that we bring to the IJB every November in advance of the budget settlement coming out in mid-December. The purpose of this paper is to advise the IJB of our current budget approach to next year's budget at the minimum and the potential implications of the years beyond that. The starting point for us is a 5-year financial plan that came to the IJB in June of this year. This paper states that as a starting point, the recurring budget gap of 6.675 million for the next 3 years. In addition to this, we've highlighted a few of the larger pressures we're currently looking into, including the long-term impacts of the children and family pressures currently in the system and speaking about earlier on this morning. Overall, we are working towards a recurring 3-year budget gap of 8.675 million. This does not factor into any additional funding that may or may not come out of the budget settlement in December. This is simply to highlight the extent of the pressures we currently know about and the level of savings and additions, etc. that we have to plan for. HSCP Senior Management have already been working on a range of savings initiatives, which we will discuss with the IJB working group in the coming weeks. We're also likely to be using a number of our smoothing reserves to help us manage this overall position. I will set up a budget development session in late January, early February. We will go into more detail around the savings proposals and offer the officer's recommendations. This isn't similar to what we've done in previous years. At this point, we will know the full extent of the savings we'll need to make, and it is my intention to try and set a multi-year budget, but we'll know the likelihood of this in February. This is a similar position being dealt with across all IJBs in Scotland, and I'm aware of a similar position in Inverclyde Council. Obviously, I'm happy to take any questions from anyone might have.
Any questions? Craig?
Sure.
Hello.
Yeah, it's not a question, just to remind the board that the previous audit, which we saw the outcome of back in September, independent audit of our, among other things, our financial resilience by KPMG. Who's it was these days?
KPMG.
Yes. Focused on two things. Among others, we did look at our medium-term financial plans, and they were content at that point in the year, at that point in the audit, that we had a fairly robust approach to this. So although we're carrying some big numbers, then we'll audit for we're doing the right thing, the right pace at the right time. And they also commented, I think, on our reserve position and our broad resilience, which is not the position in most of the HSCPs that they knowledge of, that we're in a relatively decent position to meet the size of challenge that created. Just a reminder that the external audit gave us a fairly good hard look at this, and we're relatively content with what's being proposed.
Thank you for that, Alan. Anyone else any questions on the report? No? Right. Note the proposed report of the budget 24-25. Notes the key timelines for budget and consideration for 24-25 budget. Notes the funding pressure identified and the offers of developed significant savings proposals, which will be reported to future IGB and IGB audit committees. Thank you. Then now, number 12 is integration scheme, and I have Craig again.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a paper to update IGB and present a revised draft integration scheme, which will go for consultation. The attached papers show the revised integration schemes which have been developed in consultation with our partners, Inverclyde Council and NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. These have been developed in discussion with 5 other HSCPs in the Greater Glasgow area. The aim is to have a set of consistent schemes across all 6 HSCPs in the Greater Glasgow area. As you will see in Appendix 2, the main changes across the schemes are fairly minor, but we thought it was important to mark out the main changes for transparency. And Annex 4 of the schemes highlights all the relevant pathways for whom we will consult with potential timelines. Ultimately, after the consultation process has been completed, the final version will be submitted to the IGB Health Board until the Council for final sign-off. I've been involved, along with my colleague Arlene Whaley, in this extensively for the last couple of years, so between the two of us, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Martin.
Hi, Philip. Would it be possible to get a copy of the integration agreement track changes from the previous version? I know that it does list in the paper, but it's a little bit tricky unless you're sat with the previous one to actually really understand in detail what's changed.
We will do our best for that. The reason we have not presented it at the moment is because of the particular amount of changes there has been. That's why we're trying to put in the number of do a mapping document between the two of them, and we showed the previous ones as well. But if it's something that the IGB would like, then obviously we'll go and do that ourselves.
It would just be helpful. I'm conscious that obviously these things can be quite dry, but they are very important. And thinking, we obviously we're signing this up for consultation today, but it would be good to understand, to see it side by side and understand what's actually changed.
Okay, thanks for doing Ivan. I know a lot of work is into these reports, and sometimes we just take it for granted that they appear, but I know that the work is in the background, so thank you for that. Just to note the content of the report, note the draft revised integrated scheme of concentration. All right. And unlucky for some, 13, the chief officer report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep back because I'm conscious of time. So, one of just 3 business items for me, which is delayed discharges at Gailshouse and the Lens. So the delayed discharges is just in our attempt to provide a level of assurance to the IGB about what the delayed discharge position, and we've agreed to put as part of the Chief Officer's report moving forward. So just giving you an overview of what that looks like as it stands. I think that we are still in quite a reasonable position. I wouldn't say that anyone's in a strong position at this moment in time. But
we're in a reasonable position, and I think today's delayed discharges, we've got 10 people in focus around that. So in comparison to some of our colleagues, we're doing okay. I suppose that one of the things to reflect on over the last year, that despite some of the recruitment challenges around our internal home care market, our own internal home care, our commission services, 20% reduction because of capacity issues, we still managed to discharge 5% more, even though we have that significant reduction. So I would just want to say thank you to the staff, because we probably need to hear that, because I think the challenges will remain as we move in the next year. We're doing all the things that we did last year, and obviously the previous discussion around our kin care, a regrading of our, not regrading, of our new social care workforce, and in continuing to look at our recruitment and retention of the posts. We'll continue to ensure that we've got the right response in what people are anticipating as a very challenging winter across the board for acute and the community. So that's that. Any questions about that bit? Are you happy to move on?
No, before we go on, Kate, I just have to say, Al and I think this is the 4th meeting we've had with the Scottish Government tomorrow, and they really are pushing it from a very high height, So it's important that people are aware that, although we're doing well, they're paying quite committed. They're not looking for any excuses, and they've made extra resources, so to say, available for it. So just so we're aware of that, because this will be the 4th meeting Al and I have been attended as many months. Because I'm not I don't know what the outcome will be, but usually we're doing okay, so that's fine. But just to put in your guard.
Thank you, Chair. We are not being complacent.
Thanks, Robert. Just to kind of echo what Kate said about thanking staff who are trying to deal with this, it's obviously really challenging. Just on the data, I know that the Scottish Government has asked for our data on delayed discharge. This has come up at the Consular Health and Social Care Board. Is our understanding that they're going to start publishing that? And if so, what format will that take? So how will they, if they're going to basically provide a league table, how is that going to be? How will that be comparable? Like, will they do it per 100,000? Have they given us any indication of how that looks? I was also quite surprised, and I attended a meeting with the Consular Health and Social Care Board with the Cabinet Secretary about 6 weeks ago, and he said something which kind of left my jaw on the floor, which was that he didn't think that this was a resourcing issue, which, looking at what we're facing at the moment, I don't really know how that adds up. But it's clear that they're trying to shift the pressure away from central government onto local government. So what's that data going to look like when it is public, and when will that be as well, Kate?
We don't know as yet. That's a starting point. So one of the objections that we've put in about the data is about aggregating up. So we're a population of 79,000, so I think the rest of the detail, but under 80,000, and to be aggregated up to 100,000 is disproportionate in its response. So that's been first of one of my representations, and I met with one of the members of the whole systems working group and kind of explained our position. I understand that the benchmark that the government want to take at 2019, which was the pre-pandemic benchmark, which is completely not reflective of where we are now, because we have to recognise that we're still managing the impact of COVID. And, for health and social care, that's not changed. We see it every day, Christina asked the question about long COVID. We have got a population that's much sicker than they were. We only have to look at the data that's published in the Health Board around the trajectories around health outcomes. So I have pushed back to the 2019. I suspect I'm not alone in that conversation that's been held. I'm not sure that it is a reasonable benchmark to kind of present, and that's just my view. I actually think that we are probably going to be still in the top quarter of the trajectory. We're sitting there as it stands, and I think that we do very well.
considering, and if we continue to keep a sharp focus on it and look at some of our issues, look at some of our process issues that sometimes slow us down. So a good example is the kin care. We're decluttering some of the landscape to get the care out to really, in essence, the carers quicker than we would have because of the processes that sometimes we put in place. And we'll continue to look at these opportunities.
Can I just have one quick follow-up just on the your report? What is that on the y-axis, the episodes? Like what is an episode? It's not a person, presumably. Just to try to understand what that's showing.
It's just numbers. We call an episode just numbers.
Is that like a bed day loss? Or
yes, it's bed days.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's bed days. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, it's moving. So it just quickly, the boundness, it's just a point of good news that Inverclyde, which consists of the 4 local authorities outlined in the report and the 2 police divisions and the Crown Office and Great Glasgow Town Heritage and Civil First, which is how sector provider was successful in moving forward in their bid to be a partner with the Bairn House. I've left you the links to the Bairn House. Bairn House is an international model that provides care and justice for the child at the point of identification, and its mission is to take children out of the court system and provide that level of wraparound care and trauma recovery at the point of disclosure. It is currently led by myself and Inverclyde on behalf of the partnership, and we were one of 5 local authorities partnerships that took that forward. And I think I just thought that it was useful for the IGB to know, because there's a level of publicity going around that at this moment in time. Still have a bit of work to do with Scottish Government over the money and what is the £6 million pot, and within that pot to take this forward, so that ongoing discussions will be held within the next couple of weeks. And then the last point, I felt that it's always kind of focused sometimes on what we're doing in a strategic level, but this is just a wee bit of insight to how we're trying to develop the leadership from our frontline staff upwards. So this is a LENS project, and it is in the process of working alongside, it's a charity, and it's in the process of working alongside Children's Services in an Ideas to Action programme. We were blown away with the fact that we had frontline practitioners putting in 12 ideas to action, and every one of them are fantastic. Some of them is what we need to do in terms of redesign. So it was really a level of reassurance that some of it is not about redesign. So where we've got is that we scored them in terms of the criteria that's denoted there, and we're having an event in December, and we're seeing leaders will be the next steps for development and implementation dates, and our workforce are so excited about this. We're also doing it within adult and community care, and we hope that we'll particularly take a focus on our social care workforce to look at ideas to action too, because we'll have a lot of ideas out there from our workforce about what needs to change, and these small changes sometimes can make a big difference, and that's what we're seeing in some of the ideas. So I don't know if Jonathan wants to add anything to this.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. The LENS project has really been a bit of a leap of faith in terms of taking this opportunity to our workforce to say that we hear that you've got good ideas, so let's try and bring those into action. So from an initial launch event at the Beacon in September, the full workforce took part in that. We're able to come along and, as Kate has said, 12 ideas, some of them system change, some of them quite innovative in terms of improving the experience of children and families, were developed. by teams of staff. So 6 have been taken forward, and the teams around those 6 ideas are currently taking part in structured workshops really to scale them up and to skill them up in terms of offering leadership opportunities, costing out, and having a deeper look at the sustainability and the impact of some of these ideas. So the 6 teams will present on the 7th of December, a bit like Dragon's Den, I suppose, in terms of pitching their ideas, and from there we'll be able to take a decision in terms of what we can implement. But as Kate has said, the ideas that were not shortlisted through the lens, so many of them have really got opportunity to shape the redesign of services next year. So we're going to pick those up separate to the project itself.
Thank you, John. Any other questions for Kate? John? No. Thanks, that's it. Now move further, we now move into